All right, so good to see y'all. Welcome in on a early Wednesday morning. We welcome you guys and glad you're here today. Hope the week has gone well and hope you guys have seen God working in your life and watched God work in your life. Today we're going to talk about control. I wanted to get into a discussion about that and see where that leads. But the control becomes a very difficult thing for us, and how do we deal with control, and why are we wanting to control everything in our lives? And if you're a control freak, this is not going to sit well with you, and it's not. It's going to be hard to process. I think. Keys. One of the scriptures is out of Proverbs 3:5. It says this: "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. And all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." And there we have, this. I don't. I mean, I can say that. Am I a control freak? I think everybody would say I probably am a little controlling. Um, I think I get controlling when I don't see things going well. I think that's my. I think I have the ability to let people run and let people move the way they need to move. But then when I don't see something going well, I tend to want to get in there and not necessarily run it, but I have a tendency to want to make it right, and that doesn't go well. And I think there is a place in all of our lives where instead of jumping in, or instead of waiting, we jump. And I think that that's where we miss the opportunity for God to move in that situation. And I think that it's that place where that temptation to jump into to take control because we know the way that it needs to be done, or we think we know the way it needs to be done. We don't allow God to influence or move in a different way, or perhaps um, in a way that shows us something about ourselves or about the situation. So why do we do that? And I think fear is a great reason, and it's out of Matthew 6. Therefore, verse 31. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Um, I think that when we get into that situation, it's it's fear of doing something, of making the wrong step. It's fear of, you know, whether it's fear of financially, fear in a relationship, fear in your job. Uh, it's always about making the wrong step. Um, and and a lot of times when I see a situation, you know, I I literally, my control starts to fly in, and it's because it's directly related to fear. And that passage out of Matthew really does start to speak to, it should speak to all of us, because when we're afraid about our lives, it generally is because of finances. When we're afraid about our lives, it's generally because of comfort. And because we surround our identity around our careers. And and I think a lot of times we think money will solve problems in our lives, when that's not going to help a lot of things, honestly. uh, Money can make us more comfortable, and it can give an illusion of comfort, especially in relationships. But I think oftentimes when we fear, we want to work harder. We say, if I can make more money, buy more things, then that will solve problems, and it doesn't. And so, I think that there's that place where trusting God, that there's that place where you have to start to really let go of whatever that is, and start allowing God to move in a different way in your life. And maybe it is fear is making you say things and do things that you wouldn't normally do. Um, I I know it changed the language of Abraham. I know it changed Moses's language. I know it. You know, when you get around people that operate out of faith instead of fear, the language is different. The actions are different. The attitude is different. Um, they know money doesn't solve everything. They know, replacing uh, one thing for another. Uh, a lot of times, you know, our families don't need things; they need love. They need to be heard. They need a heart. And I think fear makes us retreat back into our careers in a lot of ways, and instead of trusting God. So, you know, I think so. I think we can mix that up, and I think that's just something to think about. All right, but also I think we can, sort of blur the lines between responsibility and control. Out of Proverbs 69, I've spoken on this before. In their hearts, human plans their course, but the Lord establishes the step. And so the Bible doesn't teach us to sit around and do nothing. He doesn't. The Bible doesn't teach us to test God. That's not what we're called to do. We're supposed to plan, we're supposed to work, we're supposed to parent, manage money, we're supposed to make good decisions. We're supposed to do all of these things. All right. But that's called a responsibility. And I think I don't have children, and I've said this before, and I think I can walk out on this ledge, but even parents can make, and instead of letting God lead them in their lives, they can use their children as a an excuse not to do things that maybe God is wanting them to do. I mean, we can use an excuse for everything. All right, instead of letting God control um, that situation, whether it's within a parenting situation, a financial situation, we could easily say, well, my kids need this, so I work harder, and therefore I say, and this is what God would want me to do, But no, it that is a responsibility. You're supposed to go to work and provide for things. You don't use it as an excuse not to do things that might lead you away from things that are comfortable. So, for instance, in your families, you have a routine. And if you broke that routine, especially on the weekends, and said, "Let's do something else. Let's go serve. Let's just do something different," that's going to be an issue. Okay, it's going to be an issue, especially if you have little ones. And a lot of us don't have that any longer. But if you do, but if you just said, "You know what? I'm gonna leave this up to God this week. We're gonna let God lead us this week, and we're gonna go do something He wants us to do." But again, you know, those a lot of times we say those kids come first. We do what they want to do. We do what makes them happy. We do things, especially in our relationships with people. We do things that make a relationship move forward. In a positive way, in a good way, in an easy way. And and it's hard to give up our relationships to God. It's hard to give up control there. It's and those responsibilities can get in the way, I think, sometimes um, of what God is calling us to be. And I think that you know that those. What if we looked at those moments not as responsibilities necessarily that we want to control, but instead of maybe they're ministries, maybe they're moments for to serve, to love, to give back to, and and when we do that, we're allowing God to show us how. We're allowing God to. I mean, have. how many times have you said, okay, God, in this situation with my kid, whether they're in college or whether they're high schoolers or whatever, you know, show me the way to move in this discussion in this relationship. How do I spend time with them now? How do I spend time with my wife? How do I spend time with my within my job? Am I still you know spending 60 hours a week doing something instead of paying attention to my spouse or to the things that matter? Am I or my is my free time really yours, Lord, or is it something that I control, something that I make decisions in? And I think if we looked at them differently, maybe we looked at them as something that, belonged to the Lord first. Maybe their missions, maybe their ministries, maybe their moments of love, service, and giving instead of something that we take from or that we control. And maybe it's just perspective. Maybe if we change that perspective, things become different. Sometimes going along to get along is not the right way. So maybe it's about allowing God to control whatever is in front of us. Okay, that responsibility that we think is a responsibility, and because a responsibility is something that we must do, maybe it's something that if we hold on loosely, and maybe, don't let go, or the old 38 special, hold on loosely, but don't let go. Maybe we let God control that thing for a day or just for a week and see what happens. Um, and it literally could be different in our lives. But ultimately, in my experience with people in life, you have to let people make their own you can't control people's choices. You certainly shouldn't be controlling, you should be letting God control your decisions, your footsteps, so to speak. You can make plans, you have the responsibility, but at least let God make within each of those moments. You should be letting God control that. I mean, but ultimately people make their own choices. Out of Luke 15, the story of the prodigal son, it was his choice. The father didn't stop him from leaving. No, there was no begging. There was none of those things. It was simply this kid making his choice, leaving and going, and then um, the consequences that followed. And and this can be hard because I know the father wanted to control that situation, but he couldn't make the decision for him. And I think that's where we get into the helicopter parents, you know, um, knowing that there's danger there, and that we literally, instead of talking to the child about the danger, we just pluck the child out of danger. So it never grows. Um, and that's a tough place to be in. And there's, and we, then therefore the excuse is, well, I did that because I love them and I don't want them to hurt. Well, you have to ask yourself, how does God deal with you, and how does He, when when you have been through bad and hard times and deep valleys, has He plucked you? And you would have to say the answer is no. We just talked about the saying, "This too shall pass" on Sunday, and sometimes bad things do not pass. Sometimes really bad things remain in our lives, and how do we deal with them? And so how do you deal with people that you can't control people's choices? They have to make their own. How do you deal with that? And yeah, there is a lot of faith. There's a lot of trust. There's, but I think love means speaking truth. I think love means setting boundaries with people. And but in the ultimately love means you can't make decisions for them. They have to make their own. Real love is complete freedom to let people live their lives without you controlling their lives. And You might just look at your own and see how involved you are in somebody else's life, and how, because of your involvement, you've pushed out God's involvement. And I think that's always, excuse me, I think that's always a place where I'm trying to realign my church, my ministry, my relationship with Sherry, my relationships with people. You know, how involved am I? I was even thinking about this, like with, with the church, like how many times have I really, I used to be like really hands on with people who are sick, like super hands on. Like, I want to, if there's a sniffle, you know, I'm there. But what I was doing, honestly, when I think back on, I wasn't giving other people an opportunity to care for people. Now that's all we do there. We don't do a lot of the care. Well, I mean, we're always available, of course, but caregiving really is something that, um, caregiving is something the church does, and they're highly involved in it, supercharged involved in it. And, they do a great job. They care for one another, love one another, help one another. So they're in there. So even sometimes you have to step back and ask yourself, is this something that I could easily do, but is it something maybe somebody else needs to do so that they can learn and grow and move forward, especially if it's people in your own family. Um, this last thing, let's talk about this last thing. I think the ultimate goal is surrender and letting go. Philippians 4:6-7 says this: do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. I think it's about letting go. Now, if this is like in business, I know that because I was making money, I knew that control, like I wanted it done a certain way, and that just, I think that honestly hurt me, stressed me, did not help my employees, made other people feel like they weren't doing the job they needed to do. I mean, even with Sherry, working closely with her, that has happened before, and she knows it too in her own in her places where she's had to let go of control so that other people could do the work. I mean, it control means complete surrender. And when you let something go, we need to be in prayer about it. We need to say, God, this is what I need to have you control and not me. And God, here's what I want, but then I trust you to make what needs to happen. And I think that that's a great prayer, because that really sort of says that, thy will be done. It sort of says what Jesus said in Gethsemane, thy will be done. I want to control the situation, God. Let this cup pass from me, but, thy will be done. And I think that those are the moments of complete surrender, not just a part, not just a piece, not just a sliver of the situation, but you're surrendering the control of the whole thing. And I think the best thing for me, the example for that is obviously Gethsemane with Jesus, but also with Abraham and his son and sacrificing his son. He just, you know, he surrendered. He told God, this is what I'm, God told him this is what to do. And Abraham said yes, nothing more. No argument, no but, no. He just said, this is what God said I need to do, and I have to do this. And in sacrificing his son, obviously God did not go through with that, but Abraham's heart was all in, honestly, complete surrender, no control whatsoever. So I think there that also that prayer, not just in situations, but I think, that prayer can be something personal as well. Okay, Father, what do I need to let go? what is it in my heart, my life, my mind, my routine that needs to start looking like you? Okay. And that means I have to let go of something. That means I have to surrender. I have to surrender selfishness, greed, control, fear, whatever that is, and let you replace that with your presence. So, that then becomes something that, instead of a situation on all and yet we need to pray for all the situations so that we're not controlling them. But I think maybe it starts with us, and maybe it's something, you're releasing finally something within you that is getting in the way, that is a thorn, that is, a chain that's not allowing you to move forward. You're doing the right thing, and you're focusing first on your heart, and then out of that heart and out of a changed heart, you're allowing yourself to let go. Now, I mean, what happens when you let go? When you start to allow God to prune the things out of your heart, and you allow God to take control of situations, I'm going to tell you, this is going to follow peace. Just is. There's been no greater peace in my life to not know where my church is going to go and to trust God with it every single day. Just, there's no greater peace. I mean, I don't worry about how many people are going to show up. I don't worry about what people stay, people go. I don't worry about any of those things. I just do what God's calling me to do, and there's a tremendous, tremendous peace. And and what's happening is that the when when I've lost control and surrendered, I do see Him more clearly. I see and hear more clearly. Literally, I say, okay, that's certainly God moving and telling me this is the direction we need to go. And every direction we've gone in has been the right is for all sake and purposes has been the right decision. We haven't hit it out of the park every time, but I mean, it's been the right one. And that's an unbelievable feeling. And that happens in our lives when we eventually lose control. Peace always follows. You've given it to God. You've done the responsible thing. Once you did that, you still worked hard. You still went to work. You still, maintained a relationship with family, friends, and all that good stuff. But you let God move in and through it, and peace followed every single time for me, and I know it will for you. All right, guys, let's get you into life. I'm gonna pray for you. Here we go. Father in heaven, gracious God, be with these men. Let them get into their day. Let them move into their day, losing control. Let them surrender, whatever it is. There's something they're already waking up with, white knuckling. All right, whether it's in their own heart, whether it's something they're thinking about is going to happen within an hour, an appointment, something is already sort of being choked um, by their own desires and by their own heart. Happens to us all, Father. Today we just ask to let go. We ask to surrender. We ask to put you in front of every situation. Give us the words, give us the actions, give us the heart to deal with what's going to happen in today. And Father, let us just trust. Let's just practice this for a day. Let's just practice losing control and giving control to you. And Father, I have a feeling I know what's going to happen. I know that you will make a way clearly, that you will help us see the way clearly and more clearly than before. You will give us the words, you will give us the steps, and it will work according to your plan. Be with these men, love them, and we ask this always in Christ's name, and we say together, amen. All right, guys, much love to y'all. Great having y'all on. Good to see everybody. And make it a great day. Here if you need me always. Peace.